Has anybody seen an F-35? I'm pretty sure I left an F-35 around here somewhere. At the end of the day, this event turned out the best it possibly could. The pilot did not suffer any major injuries and no one on the ground was hurt. When things like this happen, that is the ultimate best scenario. So at the end of the day, that is priority numero uno. Numero dos would be that an official investigation will be done. But throughout this video, I'm gonna talk about some things that, who knows, could come up in that investigation or not. It's literally just my opinion. The F-35 was flying at 1,000 feet above ground level when the ejection occurred. So let's start with that. Flying at 1,000 feet above ground level, most likely the F-35 was going somewhere between 400 and 500 miles per hour. When you operate a fighter jet low altitude, you want to have a lot of airspeed because you don't have any altitude to play with. If you're up high, you can afford to be going slower because you can just dip the nose down and get that airspeed. It's what's called turning energy into airspeed. You can also turn airspeed into potential energy. If you're going fast really low, you can pull up and now your airspeed turns into potential energy, which is all that distance that you have above the ground. So in this case, the pilot's gonna be thinking, all right, I don't have a lot of distance above the ground, so I need to have my airspeed up relatively high, which leads us to the next clue, and that is at 1,000 feet from that ejection point, the F-35 traveled an additional 60 miles, which could make sense because what happens with an F-35 or an F-16 for that matter is they seek 1G flight. So if you were pulling up in 4Gs, going up into like a loop or something like that, and then you just stopped pulling, the jet is just gonna sense and seek the attitude at which the last control input was put into it. So if you let go of the stick, the jet's gonna try to stay exactly where you put it. If that's a little bit of left bank, it's gonna try to stay there. If that's pitch, if that's a little bit of dive, it's gonna try to stay there as well. That's how these flight control systems are so ultra stable. And it's really nice to have that when you're doing something else besides just flying. If you're running a radar, you're running a targeting pod, you can kind of put flying on the back burner and sort of do it automatically because the jet is so stable and that flight control system is seeking 1G. So when the pilot ejected, that's going to stay in that last known position. The jet's going to say, all right, there's no more input coming in. Maybe the pilot's doing something else. Maybe he's sipping on a cappuccino or maybe he ejected. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and seek that 1G. And that's what happened here. So if it sought that 1G and it was right side up, there's a strong chance that it's just going to continue on the trajectory that it was on when the ejection occurred. Now let's talk about why the ejection could have occurred, because ejecting in a situation like that is definitely not common. Most likely you would pitch up as a pilot and then get a lot more altitude between you and the ground before you eject. Because the more altitude that you have up to a certain point, the better your chances are of landing without suffering an injury. If you eject extremely low to the ground, you don't have a lot of time to prepare and get ready to land. And when you land with a parachute above you, you're landing with a parachute that is not square. It's not built to move you forward across the ground like most parachutes would be for like a special forces team. These parachutes are just like, hey, this is a last-ditch scenario. They're a big circle above you. You can pull some risers, which will release certain parts of that canopy to give you some forward motion. But again, if you're super low to the ground, you're not going to be able to do that. So why did the pilot choose to eject where they did? It's a great question. Now, again, the official investigation will figure that out. All I can think of is potentially some sort of flight control mechanical issue that wouldn't allow them to pitch up before initiating that ejection. If there was some sort of bird strike that would disable the jet from being able to maneuver the way the pilot thought it would be, that would warrant an ejection as well. Because when you're that low to the ground, you just can't mess around. You can't sit there and just wait to see if your flight controls come back. So potentially some sort of bird strike or mechanical failure could be something that the official investigation finds out. Was the aircraft on autopilot? Most likely not. There have been cases when fighter jets have kept going on autopilot after a pilot has ejected. I doubt this was the case here because if you're operating in the low-level environment, you're never on autopilot. You're always yanking and banking, turning and burning, hitting checkpoints, hitting target points, and maneuvering the aircraft in relation to the ground. But it has happened in the past where an aircraft was up high, a fighter jet was, and the pilot ejected on autopilot. And that thing kept going, I believe, for hundreds of miles, so a lot further than this one. And now you made it to the end of the video, so let's talk about some bonus items, and that is GCAS and ACAS. GCAS stands for a ground collision avoidance system. With a ground collision avoidance system, the pilot can literally pass out and the aircraft will recover prior to hitting the ground. It will execute its own safe escape maneuver. In the F-16, this feature has saved dozens of lives due to G blackouts and G locks. So having that in the F-35 is a crucial feature. But is this what happened in this scenario? Doubtful. I don't believe so. I think there might be some sort of system instituted that if a pilot ejects, the system no longer works, which would only make sense. You wouldn't want a pilot ejecting and then a jet continuously saving itself from the ground until it runs out of fuel. That just wouldn't make sense. So in this scenario, I believe the auto GCAS was disabled. So some news reports talking about an auto GCAS actually playing a part in this jet continuing to fly doesn't make a ton of sense to me. In the F-35, they've also instituted an ACAS, which is an air collision avoidance system, which keeps it from having midair collisions. So this is so cool because it'll keep you in a dogfight from actually running into the jet in front of you. So in a dogfight, sometimes your teeth get through the floor and you just can't control yourself from continuing to look at a target and getting what's called target fixation. So the fact that they've put this in the F-35, again, it just shows that the F-35 is the behemoth. It's the Goliath when it comes to technology. And the F-35 program office has actually released official information saying that they think the auto GCAS feature in the F-35 will save the lives of 26 pilots in the next decade. That's due to keeping that pilot from hitting the ground without being aware that the ground is coming up because they're distracted doing something else, they're flying in combat, they're looking at their wingmen, all kinds of different reasons why that could happen. So at the end of the day, we'll get the results to this F-35 being lost. I'm glad someone found it and they didn't have to go around the neighborhood putting up reward posters trying to find that F-35. Could you imagine someone's like got it in their front yard, they're like, I'm hanging on to this thing. And again, it's awesome that no one was hurt. The pilot got out without major injuries and no one was hurt on the ground. I'll give you an update video once the Marine Corps releases more information on this. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Hey, what's up guys? Ryan here. Thanks for tuning into this video. If you would, please subscribe to the channel and like this video and check out another one of these videos that pops up. That's one of the biggest things you can do to help support the channel. Thanks so much. I greatly appreciate it. Have an awesome day. We'll see you in one of these videos.